meeting, we're hoping to move forward. First thing I'll do is take a roll call, just say here, correct by your name. I'm here, John Nigro. Here. Alejandra.
Here.
Ellison.
Here.
Sarah.
Here.
Jasmine. Jasmine said she'll be late. Danielle.
Here.
We have 6 of the 7 members here, so we do have a quorum. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the November 14th meeting minutes. You should have them in front of you. We'll open it up for discussion. Are there any questions, additions, comments on the minutes? Hearing none, I would ask for a resolution to approve the minutes. Okay, second? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, you got your second. Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any noes? Unanimous. Passed. I'll turn it over to Kevin, CEO report. There's several items that need to be reported on. We have our legal staff here, many of our, yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make a couple of comments before we dive into the agenda. As you know, we are all live streaming here, and I would ask, we want to be as transparent and open as we possibly can for the benefit of the public with whose dollars we are working with here. But I would ask everybody to refrain from mentioning anything, mentioning anything about any specific bid numbers, because as you know, that would compromise our negotiating strategy in the bankruptcy court with the debtors, bondholders, and others. So you will notice in these presentations that you're about to hear, there will be no specific bid numbers in here. We will go into executive session to discuss those and, again, to preserve our negotiating strategy as we move ahead. But first, let me, the bankruptcy process, I think, is probably one of the most important ones that we have to make sure we're all aware of and cognizant of as we develop our strategy and our bid methodology. And to that effect, you'll find a document in your package that was prepared by our bankruptcy court attorney, Peter Pryor. Peter Pastore. Peter, anybody here remember Peter Pryor?
Yes. Yeah.
Very well. Right, that's good. But anyway, Peter Pastore will walk us through the timeline here. Please feel free to, ask any questions of Peter of the process or any other questions you have short of any of the specific bid numbers. So, Peter?
Yeah, thank you very much, Kevin.
No,
No, I'm fine. I'm fine here. There were 2 balloonists that were flying over the country, and they couldn't find their way around, and then they finally stumbled upon a bystander down below, and one of the balloonists yelled down and said, "Hey, can you tell us where we are?" And the fellow on the ground, the pedestrian, said, "Well, you're about 100 miles from the lake and 200 miles from the mountain." And one balloonist looks at the other and goes, "How the hell, what is the luck of this happening? We finally find somebody who can tell us where we are. We run into a bankruptcy lawyer." He goes, "How did you know he's a bankruptcy lawyer?" He says, "Who else can tell you exactly where you are, but you still don't know where you are." But anyway, going into this sheet that everybody was provided, yesterday, December 4th, was the deadline for submitting or receiving approval as a stalking horse bid. And if you want me to review this, Kevin? Okay. It's all there, but just to summarize, on the 25th, on November 25th, Kevin delivered on behalf of this board a proposal to become selected as the stalking horse bidder. And you had authorized him to do that. There were several days of silence, and then we were eventually informed by the debtor that bid was rejected. Okay? And the debtor did state to, I believe, Harold and others that they fully anticipated the authority would submit a qualified bid by the normal bid deadline, which is tomorrow, December 6th. So, I mean, just going over where we are, we made that proposal. It was in front of the full board and all of their counsel, so it was fully vetted and everybody knew. So anyway, after that date, Tom Owens and others, including Joe Scott and myself, reviewed what it required that we become a qualified bidder on December 6th. And if you remember, we filed papers in bankruptcy court requesting Judge Littlefield to relieve us from filing a deposit. And that was part of the bankruptcy court order approving the bid procedures. So a deposit tomorrow is not necessary. We've also received a lot of other comfort from the debtor and the consultation group that we don't have to have a financing in place by tomorrow. They've been very lax on that. But tomorrow we are prepared to submit a bid so that we would be a qualified bidder, and that'll include a marked up copy of the purchase agreement. They're not going to require that the authority sign the purchase agreement. But Tom Owens and I and Joe have negotiated what we think is a reasonable document that we would execute if we're the successful bidder. We also are going to provide them a resolution saying we have the corporate authority, and we're going to have a letter, a separate document that says, Kevin, on behalf of the authority, is authorized to offer X. Now, once that is submitted, and we believe we got full compliance with the bankruptcy court order and all of the bells and whistles we needed, we are in the game, okay? We get to go to the auction, which is going to be held on December 12th. We've been assured that whatever qualified bids are received, they will not be made public, okay? Now, that's an assurance. I don't know, in these kinds of things, a lot of lawyers, employees see things, whether it leaks out or not, who bid what, we don't know, but the process is not to allow that to be public. Then on December 12th, we go down the street to 80 State Street to the offices of Cohen Dykeman, the debtor's attorney's office. They have a local office. And we are to participate in a bidding process, an auction, okay? The one thing about this auction that's a little different, but it's not atypical totally, is that we have two creditors that have the right to credit bid and do not have to put up a deposit. One you know of is the bondholders. They're owed $50 million, probably more, because they can include interest and attorney's fees to the value of their real property that's pledged to them. And then we also have the DIP lender, debtor in possession lender, that advanced the college $10.8 million, almost 11. And I'm told that they didn't just lend them a couple million, they advanced the entire piece. So the college is sitting on $10.8 million in cash, and the DIP lender now has a right to credit bid, but only on those properties that it has a lien on. So it's a little bit funky here because you've got the bondholders who have a $50 million credit bid on a chunk of property, and the DIP lender who have a credit bid on that of those other properties. The other kind of twist here is that they are soliciting bids for individual parcels and the whole. So what typically happens is they'll ask for bids on individual properties. We don't really have a clue on what individual properties are going to be bid on. And we hear from the rumor mill that there are some. We don't know the amounts. We don't know the people. They'll take those bids and they'll go through the whole process. And then when they conclude that, they'll turn to the bulk bid process. I anticipate we're going to be the only bulk bidder. I could be wrong. I don't know. And then we would have our bulk bid either approved or overruled by the credit bid of either the bond holders or the DIP lender or a combination of both. So it's going to be a little bit flexible. I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but those parties will be able to outbid us on a credit bid. Then once the debtor concludes the auction, The next day,
Can I
oh,
just-
yeah, sure, John.
The bidders, do they have to put up any collateral?
They have to put up a deposit on the bid that they make. We don't.
I understand that.
So if they put up a bid on one of the buildings for 3 million, I think it's like about 6, what's the
But
amount?
the bondholders don't have to.
No, the credit bids don't have to. Third parties would have to put up, I think it's almost 6%.
That's it.
It's a fair amount of change.
Plus or minus.
And also no financing contingency. It's a pretty strict bidding procedure. And whether they've qualified or not, I don't know. I'm assuming that they will.
No financing contingency.
No financing contingency. So the next day, the 13th of December, the debtor, together with the consulting parties, remember the consulting parties are the bondholders, the DIP lender, there's no creditors committee, and their advisors have to act in unison and submit to the bankruptcy court that what they believe to be the successful bidders on the 13th. Now, once that's filed, it's public record. Anybody can see it, it's online, electronic filing. And that will be, we'll find out at that point. I assume that we're gonna be at that auction, we'll get a pretty good feel on the auction day, what's gonna happen. And then after those bids are filed, the next big date is the 17th of December. And anybody that has an objection or a problem with the way the auction was conducted, the bidding process, or anything, can file an objection with Judge Littlefield. And then he will hear on the 19th any objections, and he will seek to approve the successful bidders. So I don't know, that's kind of where we are. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure, Al, go ahead.
Can you explain what kind of objections usually come up during that process?
Well, technically you don't see any, but if somebody had information that there was collusion among the bidders, that one of the bidders knew that the other bidder was there and they sugared them off, and a collusion would be a problem. There might be a problem in the way this credit bid works, because if there's multiple credit bids and there's multiple properties, I think we gotta be real kind of watching how that works, because I don't know how that's gonna be a really difficult thing to figure out, because there's certain properties the DIP lender would have a bid on. Certainly, if we don't bid more than the bondholders are owed, they can wipe out our bid by just bidding in their 50 million, okay? So it doesn't matter that they're not credit bidding on all the properties. They could, the debtor could say, well, I'm getting more from the bondholders on their credit bid than I am on the bulk from the authority. But those are the kinds of things, I don't anticipate there would be anything, I don't think there'd be any collusion, but you never know.
Is it a hearing?
Yes.
In front of Littlefield? And
Yes.
You have to testify? As to
No,
what is that?
there'll only be an offer of proof if there's objections.
Okay.
Typically, if there's no objections, the court just approves it. But Judge Littlefield may do some Q&A. He may dig into what happened, where it's going. He may want to know a little bit more than just rubber stamp what bids are being produced and deemed the high bidders.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Peter? Okay, I know this is a lot to take in, and it's a little bit of an arcane, for those of you who are, even for those of you who are lawyers, this is a little bit of an arcane part of the law, but for those of us who are not attorneys, this is very different from most legal matters we deal with. All right, let's, from here, I'd like to turn it over to Harold Islin, who is representing us, and Harold, maybe can give a little color and context to the board on the stalking horse bid and response and follow-up.
Yeah, so I'll present some now, and I think we'll reserve some for later.
In executive session, right?
Yes.
We're not gonna talk about any numbers in the open session.
Right. Again, and Peter covered some of this, but just to remind everybody where we were at, that we had decided, you all had decided, let's explore that option, which we did. And There was a proposal made to be a stalking horse bidder for various reasons that I think we'll talk about later. It was turned down. I wouldn't read anything into that other than, you know, for various reasons, the terms and other things weren't where they would need to be to kind of sweep the field away. And I think, as Peter said, it's without any prejudice to you, you can come back in tomorrow and still make a bid. That was sort of a special process that, as somebody who wanted to take as an entity that was willing to take the whole campus, it made some sense, but for a lot of reasons, I think, you know, it didn't really get there. And they had reasons which we can get into separately why there was a preference. And frankly, in many ways, it may be better for everyone to see what comes in the regular bids, and then people, as the college understands what's out there, and as bondholders understand what's out there, and ultimately as we understand what's out there, it may get to a better result than trying to do the stalking horse. So that came and went. You know, they officially declined whenever I last spoke to them, but Monday, I think, or Friday, we were working through Thanksgiving, but so we're past that. So now we're, as Peter said, the next phase will be what if anything you decide to do tomorrow.
Thanks, Harold. Any questions on that from Harold? Okay. Next piece here, I'd like to turn it over to Tom Owens. You know, we did spend a lot of time, and when we're dealing with lawyers, time means money. So we spent a lot of money putting a purchase and sale agreement together to qualify as a stalking horse bidder, which all now seems to have been less important. I'm sorry?
We need a purchase agreement.
Yeah, but again, I gotta be candid here. I was disappointed with the response we got, you know, just the way some of these things were handled, but, you know, that's a whole different thing. But we did negotiate a purchase and sale agreement, which we will have to submit tomorrow. And I'll let Tom and whoever else give a little color and context to that about, you know, what has to be done to submit the qualified bid and vis-a-vis the purchase and sale agreement and what doesn't.
The purchase and sale agreement, I'm sure most people are familiar with. That is the document pursuant to which the college, in this instance, would sell their property, and whoever the successful bidder would become what's called the purchaser in the purchase and sale agreement. And that document is what governs the transaction, subject to whatever changes the bankruptcy court may insert on its own as this process continues to play out. So there is a baseline purchase and sale agreement that was part of the bankruptcy court's proceeding. So in sum, that agreement is very much an as-is, whereas agreement. The ultimate buyer of these properties takes the properties as they are. It starts with zero contingencies. Just tell us how much you want, here's your properties. Thank you very much, goodbye. We did go through some red lines, and the college's counsel has been cooperative with us. Important contingencies that we were able to get them to agree to is our ability to both obtain the county backing on financing and also to obtain the bond issuance to be completed. And the college agreed to that. So that is a contingency now on our contract. We have until April 15th to do that. If we're unable to do it, we can terminate. Again, these are rare to get. I think in a bankruptcy proceeding, we did obtain those contingencies. We got limited time. There's 94 parcels here, depending on how you count them. You have 30 days to get a title report. They don't traditionally give time to do a title report. We got 30 days after the bankruptcy court. If we choose to do that, that's another decision we can make. The bankruptcy court, as Peter can advise, provides certain protections to title. It's not 100%. There are certain title matters that will continue to flow. Risk is probably very small. but unless you do a title report, it's hard to tell. We got 30 days to be able to do that and to raise objections. That is a win. We made sure there were some questions about which properties may have been omitted from the list. We made sure those included all of those properties. So we do have a comprehensive list and now understand that the properties that will be part of this transaction is all of the real properties owned by the debtor. We also got the promise from College of St. Rose, the debtor, that they would remove everything before closing. Originally, it was at some time after. We didn't want to move X number of whatever out of buildings that we own after we closed. So we did get, and that could include records, musical instruments, whatever. If the stuff was there, it would have been an issue, could have been an issue for us. The college has promised to get that out before closing. Those are some of the changes we were able to effect. In the end, this remains limited in our ability, with the exception of what I've talked about, to get out. So potentially big transaction, not a lot of contingencies. That's how it's set up.
So could you just talk a little bit about, the variance from the order to what we're actually now told we have to submit with our qualified bid?
Yeah, the main variance is the order specified and executed purchase and sale agreement. I've been raising with the debtors council, and they've understood that it's kind of hard to sign a purchase and sale agreement without the exhibits. They've not been populated, without certain items. And they confirmed in writing that tomorrow, that's not a requirement. Should this board choose to submit a bid tomorrow, that we would have to do. So we will submit a red line version of the purchase and sale agreement that we have cooperatively worked on with debtors council. And that's still going to be subject to some tweaks. But the main tenets, the main terms and conditions, we've now worked out. So that's the extent. So subject to any questions, I'm happy to take any.
Okay, hearing no questions, Ellen and,
Yeah, let me just keep going on here. Just, again, just to perfect our position as a qualified bidder, we have to make sure that we have our finances together. Another step that we've taken to move us down that path is we issued an RFP for bond underwriters, which Dylan did for us, and I just like Dylan and Joe has any comments on that, to just walk through the response to that and where we are.
Sure. Yeah, so we've got 7 responses from multiple parties that some of them asked questions ahead of time, but for the most part, they were pretty assured in the RFP that we had written. So thank you, Joe and Tom, for your help with that as well. The next step is going to be reviewing them. I've already created a rubric and a form to basically fill in based on the criteria we created before. I believe the highest percentage went to experience specifically, and then it goes in descending order. So the idea would be to read those. So we're going to be putting together a group and reviewing that, getting the answers back out. I'm not sure exactly on the timing how you want to do it, given that we're doing this bid now and there's a little bit of question about whether or not we're going to need it. So, but I think as it stands right now, we're in a good position, and everybody that responded is very excited to be working on this project.
You want to just tick through the names of the firms that?
Sure. So the ones we received are D.A. Davidson Companies, that's out of New York City, Raymond James, Piper Sandler is local, Drexel Hamilton, Laylock Van, FHN Financial Capital Markets, and Key Bank with a C, Capital Markets.
Any questions for Dylan on the bond underwriters? Again, we believe that once we choose an underwriter and give them the go-ahead with a specific number, it'll be 60 to 90 days till we're able to raise the money. People feel confident that this can happen well. And the biggest part of that is because of the relatively high financial rating that Albany County enjoys. And we are just kind of one notch below that because of what we are. And, maybe with that, the next piece that's, critically important that we also notched away was the debt service agreement. And with us today is Dave Riley, Director of Finance and Budget for Albany County. And Dave was kind of Dave and Joe oversaw that. I don't know, how did you explain it, Dave?
He drafts the perfection and I get a pass. So you're gonna jump in for a second? Okay, so, obviously, all the pride of ownership here is Joe's. This is all his work, putting everything together. It follows the broad strokes of the state authorization that kind of granted all the authorizations to the authority to raise these funds. We left all mentions of the authorization amount, or at the full amount authorized by the state. We'll to not play our hand, as part of our bidding strategy there, as you had said. Not a lot of pushback from the legislature. Seemed to be very well received by the body as a whole. It did pass by a party vote, so the Democrats voted unanimously for it. The Republicans were against it, but we got to where we needed to be, and thankfully with their help, we can move forward with this stuff.
And that was what, just this past Monday night?
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got the debt service agreement in place. This is the document that through which the county will pay the debt service on the bonds that we would issue to procure the campus. So again, we've just a little bit further in perfecting our, proof of financial wherewithal. So any questions on any of that? Anyone? Okay. So let's see, the next thing that we've been working on, and you should have a copy in front of you, is the estimated operating expenses. For whatever we bid on the campus, we will have to include an amount of money for the authority to operate and maintain those facilities until we sell them off or redevelop them. And this is a kind of preliminary budget just to give everybody a sense of where we are. And I'll turn it over to Amy, our CFO, and Joan for any commentary.
Yes, so we made some changes to the budget that we presented last time. Our hopes are to, over a 3-year period, to operate the campus for, roughly $5 million. Again, the larger dollar amounts are the property insurance, which will increase, based on the bonds. Property management, Dylan has done some work to look into, how much it would cost to have a property manager there. Security and utilities. And, our hopes is over the 3-year period that, the costs will, be reduced each year out.
As properties are sold.
Yes.
So, again, this is an amount of money that, it's hard to, determine exactly what's going to be needed, but if we feel that this is an amount that would be sufficient, and if we don't use it, we can just, pay the bonds off. As Joe has advised us, Joe Scott, our bond counsel, has advised us that there will be call provisions in these bonds that will enable us to, pay them off at certain intervals if we don't need the money. Any questions on the operating budget for Dylan or Amy? Okay, that concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Resolution?
So I'm going to quickly review, summarize the resolution that's part of your package.
This is number 777.
Yes, sir. It's actually looks like this. Let's see it.
Yeah, I think the page is numbered here.
777 is the one.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah,
that-
that's
that's
why I
why
asked
I
that.
asked.
Yep.
You're
Right.
It's about 6 pages further in.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
That's page-
Submission, okay.
Yes, sir. Okay, great. So just to summarize, don't take anything I say to either subtract or add to what the written document provides in front of you, but to summarize, this resolution, should it be considered and adopted by the board, would be for a project, the basic project, as it's described here, is the acquisition and then operation of the St. Rose properties that we've been talking about. So that would be what the project would be, and then you would be authorizing two things in this resolution. One is to authorize the chair, vice chair, and CEO to basically take the steps necessary to put in a qualifying bid or bids, because the qualifying bid, as Peter has discussed, could be step one. Subsequent steps would be taken at the auction, so there may be more than one bid. So you're authorizing the chair, vice chair, and CEO to take those steps and actions necessary to put in the bid, to execute a purchase and sale agreement, and to acquire and then operate the project. And then that's the action you're considering taking. Before you take that action, we need to do a determination pursuant to SECRA. And that is also in this resolution, where we are making the determination that this is an unlisted action in the sense that it's the acquisition of approximately 29 acres. So it's not a type 2, it's not a type 1, it's right in the middle. And as a result, we need, as a government entity, to take a hard look, which the staff has done, and there's an EAF in your package as well, that went through. And in sum and substance, the rationale of the staff's and now the board's determination, should we choose to adopt it, is that this is simply an acquisition. There's nothing changing to the operation, to the effect, to the property as it sits now, the day before, if we were to acquire it, and the day after. Now, clearly, if there's redevelopment or something that changes on that property, we, as an authority, or anyone that would own the property, would need to take those, would need to comply whatever relevant requirements are to that owner for any such redevelopment or change in operation, change in use, something like that. But this is simply the acquisition and maintenance of that property. So that's the rationale as to the finding of no significant impact to the environment. So those are the two things that are contained in this resolution. Again, I don't want to subtract or add. I know you've all looked at this, you've had it in your package. But that's what, if you should choose to adopt it, that's what this resolution would so authorize.
Any questions at this point?
Mr. Chairman, what I would suggest we do is go into executive session to discuss the actual bid amount, so that you can give me and yourself and the Vice Chairman the adequate direction from the
So
board.
what I would suggest is there would be three reasons to go into executive session if the board so chooses to do so. One would be to discuss the potential acquisition of real property, namely the St. Rose properties that we've been discussing, the public discussion of which would substantially affect the value thereof. Two, to discuss current and active litigation that we've appeared in, which is the St. Rose bankruptcy proceeding. And three, even beyond the executive session, that this would be the opportunity for the board to both seek and obtain legal counsel, which would be exempt from the open meetings law. So those are the three reasons that we would move into a closed session.
And then we would come back out of executive session and vote the resolution, up or down.
Okay, move to go into executive session. Second. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none.
If we could excuse it. I would like to mention that County Legislator Joyce is here with us today and very interested in our proceedings.